Good evening. I'll reconvene this meeting of the Job Growth, Energy, Affordability, Policy, and Finance Committee. Today is Tuesday, March 27th. We are on public testimony. The first testifier on the list is Sandra Skinaway. Sandra, are you here?
Yes, I am.
So you're next. And then on deck is Irene Fulstrom. Irene, are you here?
Right here.
Yep. So if you want to go ahead, we should have two chairs up there besides Representative Fabian, so that way you're.
Thank you.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Okay. Okay. Bonjour. Sandra Skinaway, Indigenous Cause, Awasisi, Indodame. My name is Sandra Skinaway, and I'm a member of the Bullhead Clan, and also a member of the Sandy Lake Band in Mississippi, Ojibwe. Thank you for providing the opportunity to speak to you today. For the record, I oppose this legislation because it bypasses the ongoing, very difficult process that's being conducted today. I wasn't aware of this legislation until this afternoon, because this morning I came down from Duluth, Minnesota to speak for the wolf at another meeting. The wolf is still threatened and vulnerable, so I was here to speak for them today. And now I'm here to be yet another voice for another threat against our way of life and for our environment. And I was kind of very surprised to hear that there was a hearing going on, or there was even legislation. So I think that speaks a lot in how this is kind of like being conducted behind closed doors. I think more people should be aware of this threat against, the American way of doing things. I mean, there's processes, legal processes going on, and to circumvent or bypass them is just not fair. And a lot of, like Don Goodwin said earlier, I mean, she pretty much speaks for everybody, every Ojibwe person, how we feel about the environment, the wild rice. My daughter started ricing a couple years ago, and she loves doing that. And she provides for our family. And she also provides for herself because, we use wild rice in a lot of ways. We use it to barter, like our ancestors used to do in the past. We eat it all the time. I mean, it's our way of life. But yes, I just wanted to speak today. I didn't get a chance to really do a very good testimony. But otherwise, I just want to say I oppose this legislation, and I hope and urge you to as well. Miigwech. Thank you.
Ms. Skinaway, I do want to disagree with one thing you said. Your testimony was just fine. Whether we agree or disagree with it, your testimony, you did a good job, because every time people come down and talk to us, it's a good thing. So,
Thank you.
Yep, Ms. Fulstrom, and then Scott Russell. Scott, are you here? Okay, so you're on deck. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed to the testimony.
My name is Irene Fulstrom. Members of the committee, thank you for hearing my testimony today. I work for the Minnesota Environmental Partnership. I'm also a member of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, and I'm from Cass Lake, Minnesota. I split my time between Duluth, Minnesota, and Bemidji right now. So I'll start with my testimony. It would terminate, first of all, thank you for hearing testimony on this bill, HF 3759. This bill would take Minnesota in the wrong direction. It would terminate all review and permitting at the PUC. It would give Enbridge full authority to build the pipeline immediately on its chosen route and provide it extraordinary powers to condemn land of its choosing through eminent domain. It would avoid consideration of environmental and tribal impacts. And it would provide no substitute system for oversight. And regardless of your political stance on this pipeline, it would impugn the good faith of Minnesotans who have worked hard to ensure a fair and evidence-based process. The review process has considered hundreds of hours of testimony from those who would be impacted, tens of thousands of public comments, mine are among those tens of thousands of public comments, dozens of expert analysis from witnesses on all sides of the issue, and the participation of community groups from around the state, many of whom you've heard here today. While I respect that legislators have a keen interest and knowledge of this issue, bypassing this public participation in the PUC process would be damaging to Minnesota's democracy. Apart from bypassing the current review process, it would grant approval without a certificate of need. This means that the state would be unable to impose conditions on its permits or revoke them in the future, even if the pipeline were found to be harmful to Minnesotans. This would grant Enbridge a blank check and a get-out-of-trouble-free card at the expense of communities, industries, and American Indian tribes and tribal communities along this route. I would ask the legislators whether they have fully researched or discussed the debate surrounding the need for this pipeline that the PUC has already considered. Wholesale sales of petroleum products are down 19% in Minnesota just since 2004. Electric vehicles are set for exponential growth. Minnesota refineries are operating near full capacity. I would also urge you to consider the Line 3's hazards. A pipeline is a 60-year entity. If Minnesota allows it to be built, we're married to it for the long haul. The new pipeline corridor would traverse Minnesota's best quality wetlands, wild rice lakes, sovereign treaty land, and 3 different watersheds. But Enbridge has not seriously considered a safer alternative. But the PUC is not required to follow the department's recommendation. They have run a fair, even-handed process that is almost complete. The administrative law judge's report is due out on April 23rd. The PUC's final decision is expected in June. This process has taken into account public participation, expert analysis, the state's energy needs and forecasts, and the cost and benefits of this pipeline. Preemptively granting extraordinary power to a foreign company without adequate review would directly impact tens of thousands of Minnesotans and disrespect the lawful democratic process our state has enjoyed. I urge you to let this process be completed, to let the facts be fully and fairly considered, and to respect the Minnesotans who have put their time and energy into seeing this review through. I guess I will just say in closing, it's unclear to a lot of us citizens of Minnesota and tribal members why a bill like this is even being considered. We've made it incredibly clear that if you try to build a pipeline in our treaty territory, there will be a response. We won't let it happen. So why keep proposing legislative proposals like this? Why bring it to this body when you know if it is approved through the Public Utilities Commission's process, that pipeline's not going to get built? So why? This is just inviting more violence. It's inviting a lot of, it's going to be a huge cost to the state. It's really irresponsible. So I encourage you all to really consider this. If you think that Standing Rock was a big problem for the state of North Dakota, I mean, we're still seeing the effects of that. We're still talking about it. We still see things in the media, coverage of the after effects and the post-traumatic stress disorder and the incredible costs to that state. If you think that was horrible and had a negative impact, approve this pipeline or keep introducing bills like this, because then we'll see. Thank you.
Ms. Fulstrom, did I hear you right? You said that if the pipeline is, if the PUC approves it, the pipeline won't be built?
Not through our treaty territory. It will not be. We will not allow it.
How do you propose to not allow it? I mean, I think we would agree that we live under a rule of law, and if the law permits the pipeline to be permitted, are you appealing to a higher level than the law?
Well, the law really isn't usually on the side of tribal communities anyway. So, I think that we would have an issue with that. I'm saying that there are Native people in our communities in Minnesota on the reservations right now, in our tribal communities, citizens of this state, who we have said in tribal governments, there are resolutions that have been passed. I don't know if you've just ignored them or read them and don't think that they're serious or take them seriously at all, but We have said you cannot pass through our treaty territory. You cannot build more pipelines through our treaty territory. You've taken enough. You've done enough. We don't even need this pipeline. So that is what I'm saying.
Well, Ms. Fultrom, I understand that.
No, you don't. You don't understand this clearly.
Ms. Fultrom, are you saying that if the Public Utilities Commission approves this pipeline, it's still not going to get built?
I'm saying that you can go ahead and try, but there are individuals, and you know, we have worked hard on this to try to convey convey the message and to plead with you, please don't approve this pipeline because you will be met with violence. And we just have been trying to prevent that from happening. We know what's going to happen. We know in our communities and among our people what the sentiment is. And this sentiment is no more. Enough is enough. And that is why we've worked so hard, along with a lot of the environmental organizations, our coalition here, who have worked so hard to plead with the PUC, with our legislators, to not approve this. Don't approve this.
Well, Ms. Fultrom,
Or take it somewhere else. Put it through somewhere else. You know, I am not a fan of that position, but because we just don't need any more pipelines, period. But there are many more options. You don't have to keep putting pipelines through the poorest and most impoverished and most oppressed communities in the state. You don't have to do that anymore.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your opinion. I'll share you my opinion.
Yes, please do.
I did not hear from you a plea to not build a pipeline.
Oh, yes.
What I heard,
before
if I
you
could just
a year
finish,
ago.
and then I'm happy to give you the last word.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Give me your.
I don't hear
your
a
opinion.
plea. I don't hear a plea to listen to not build a pipeline.
Well,
I hear someone trying to instigate violence.
Oh, you know what? If I'm.
No, that is what I'm hearing. But I'll give you the last
You're the
word.
one that's on the bill. You're instigating the violence,
Okay.
right? I'm not
no.
instigating the violence. I'm here to prevent that.
Ms.
And I have
Fultrom,
been.
you
I have
just
been
said
advocating
if
for
the
this
Public
for a year.
Utilities Commission approves the pipeline, that it's still not going to get built. And I asked you, what is the higher authority you're appealing to besides the law? You didn't answer the question. I'll give you another
Am
chance.
I really in a position to be responding to that? I don't think that I have the authority to respond to that. What other individuals are appealing to? I can't control what people do separately and on their own. What I can do is advocate the hell out of the fact that we shouldn't be doing this pipeline, and that's what I've done. I'm doing my part by arguing and advocating against this pipeline, against all pipelines, as a matter of fact. I'm doing my part. Are you doing yours to prevent costs, unnecessary costs to this state and to your constituents? No, you're not. Are you a co-sponsor on this bill?
Thank you for your testimony.
I
I'm not, but I will be. I offered the amendment on the floor, but I'll make myself a co-sponsor now. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, and I'm glad you'll be adding yourself to this bill.
Scott, you're next. And then Akeelia Sanders-Reed, are you still here? You're on deck. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Scott Russell, SCOTT-RUSSELL. I'm a volunteer with Sierra Club North Star Chapter. I am the co-chair of the Beyond Oil and Tar Sands Committee. And I'll start with a digression. If you want to talk about a jobs opportunity, the current Line 3 is old and failing, and the proposal is to leave it buried in the ground. This is saving Enbridge $1 billion and leaving those costs to future landowners in the state to clean it up if and when there's problems with it. So there could be a lot of jobs made if they just required, if either the state or the PUC required Enbridge to clean up its mess. It's really the first rule of kindergarten is clean up your own mess. I think it's fair to ask that of Enbridge. But I said that's a digression. This debate isn't really about it's not about jobs at this point, this bill. It's not about the EIS. It's not about the demand for oil. It's about democracy and letting the process play out as it was meant to be. I'm personally not afraid of this decision becoming political, because every decision that you make in this body is political. I don't see it as a negative term, but let's try a thought experiment. Let's assume that the DFL was in power and they brought a bill here to kill Line 3 before it went to the PUC. How different would the speeches be and the votes be? And I think that's where being political is problematic. I think people get cynical when the process in which way you vote just depends on which way the bill's written, and not staying true to the process as it was written. I personally, I've been involved with this. I started with the Sierra Club because I really care about this pipeline issue. I've personally put in, I'm sure, over 100 hours in this, and I'm not even a drop in the bucket. There's so many people that have invested their time and energy and passion on this issue, and by taking this decision out of the PUC, You're telling everybody that their time was wasted, that their voices didn't matter. And I don't think this is just an issue for the Line 3 pipeline. This is sending a really bad signal to our public. It says, if there's a contentious issue and you decide to get involved, give it a second thought, because you can put a year or two of your effort in, and then the legislature can just come in and change the rules at the last minute. I would ask you to reconsider this bill, to pull the bill, and really honor the work that the people have done, and encourage people to keep being involved in the process. Voting this thing through and trying to kill Line 3 in spite of all the time and effort that it's putting in is really sending the wrong message to Minnesota. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Athelia, and then Michelle Thielen. You're on. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Akila Sanders Reed, and I will apologize at the start of this testimony. I am beginning to lose my voice a little, but I'm here to use what's left of it to say that I oppose House File 3759. I am one of the 13 youth climate interveners who were granted official party status in the Line 3 case. Me and the 12 other young people ages 16 to 23 who are in this with me have spent the last year of our lives involved in this Public Utilities Commission process, which is not friendly or accessible to any of us as normal individuals. We've spent a year learning without having a lawyer. We have been representing ourselves alongside parties that have legal counsel. So we have had to teach ourselves what a certificate of service for e-dockets and our petition to intervene was. We coached 10 expert witnesses through filing their pre-filed testimony according to the formatting rules and also the scope that they were intended to follow. Coached more expert witnesses through this process than any other party other than Enbridge. We brought those expert witnesses to the 3-week evidentiary hearing during which we attended every single day, and also cross-examined Enbridge experts, asking them for further information in the case, having read their hundreds of pages of testimony. And finally, we filed a 70-page legal brief this last January. This is a group of high school and college students who have poured hundreds of hours into this process. We didn't want to spend a year of our lives doing this, but we feel lucky that we had the opportunity to do so because we felt it was necessary. Enbridge, we heard recently, spent $50 million lobbying the Public Utilities Commission, whereas we were begging sympathetic community groups for printing costs. I'm not going to argue the merits of the Line 3 pipeline case here, because I have spent the last year doing that. Instead, I want to talk about the process. I want to talk about getting rid of a process that so many people have invested in. I want to talk about the fact that you want to take away all the input that 5 sovereign nations, 4 environmental organizations, and 13 young people put into this process. And I have a few questions for you, actually, Mr. Fabian. Since you're proposing to fast-track this because you believe that all of the review supposedly is in, although I agree with the previous comments that that is an untrue statement, can you tell me the difference between the subject matter of Mr. Brown and Mr. Paulson's testimony during the evidentiary hearing?
I cannot.
Well, hold on.
Can you?
Hold on. We don't do Q&A up here, so.
I believe I just witnessed you doing Q&A with Ms. Fulstrom, so I would like to ask 3 further questions.
Then, ma'am,
Mr. Ruffalo, I will address them.
if you'd like to offer questions in a committee of the membership, run for office and win.
I intend to, perhaps, and I know many other young people who will.
He will answer your questions, but complete
Great.
your testimony. We'll complete all public testimony. Representative Fabian will get the last word in terms of answering questions. We want to submit them in writing, but please continue with your testimony for obvious reasons. We can't have testimony turn into a debate between members and testifiers. I hope that's.
May I direct them to you instead then, sir?
You may.
Great. Can you tell me the lowest threshold difference in flow that Enbridge leak detection systems will send an alert for?
Oh, you want me to answer them? Oh, I see. Okay. No, you can go ahead and ask as many questions as you want, but we're not going to. The committee process is not one where we debate with the public. So again.
That leaves me a little bit confused as to what happened approximately 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But I will say that I can also recite off the top of my head then, under the presumption that you cannot, since I have not heard otherwise, the number of timber mats that Enbridge would purchase in order to remove the old Line 3, the equations used in the environmental impact statement social cost of carbon calculations, And was wondering if anyone knew which of Enbridge's experts was in charge of the cultural impacts, but that would have been a trick question because they didn't have one. Assuming that the folks in this room electing not to give an answer to those questions don't have them, I would ask that you defer to the people who do, the people who have spent hundreds of hours looking over the record for this case, and that is Administrative Law Judge Ann O'Reilly, the parties involved, and the Public Utilities Commissioners. If folks in this room are not prepared to do a thorough review of the thousands and thousands of pages of information related to the Line 3 pipeline, I don't think this decision is yours to make. And I definitely don't think that I should, I'll wrap up since my voice is definitely going at this point, saying that I have a younger brother, and I enjoy playing board games with him whenever I have the chance to be home. And when we were little, he would suggest a board game, and this happened repeatedly. He would suggest a board game and we'd get partway through playing, and if someone else started winning, he would flip the board over and start crying and run away. And I doubt that Enbridge would even want this bill to be proposed if they thought they had a shot at getting their certificate of need and having a legally defensible permit. So I can only assume that this is being proposed because someone wants to change the rules because they feel like they're losing. And while I didn't want to spend a year of my life arguing about this pipeline and in a court system, I definitely don't feel like I should have to be here today telling full-grown adults to stop acting like toddlers and flipping over the board game when they seem to be on the losing side. Finally, it's good to hear that there is an opportunity, it sounds like, for some kind of written input to this portion of the process and this testimony. I know I do agree with you, Mr. Fabian, that there are a number of people from up north who would probably like to give their input who didn't have time to drive down here today. So if there is a means by which people can officially give notice of testimony for or against this bill in writing, I would love to hear about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Sanders-Reed, I think your voice sounds fine. Just so again, thank you. Michelle Thielen. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
I'm Michelle Thielen. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. Please, please, I urge the committee to vote no on this bill. Do not allow Enbridge pipeline construction without finishing the ongoing Minnesota PUC permitting process. Moving ahead as proposed in 3759 without regulatory oversight is dangerous and wrong. In testimony today, the Minnesota Department of Commerce said there is no need for this pipeline, and they and the administration urge you to vote no. And this has been said, filed with the PUC. My father grew up a few miles south of Itasca State Park, near the source of the Mississippi River. My folks still live there. It's a gorgeous landscape full of lakes, streams, wetlands, wildlife. This proposed pipeline would be constructed just a few miles from the source of the Mississippi River. And we know how dangerous and hard to clean up tar sands oil spills are. We all deserve clean water to live, and that includes the plants, fish, and wildlife that would be destroyed when this pipeline spills. Imagine all the lost dollars from tourism, from the resorts, from the hunting and fishing when this pipeline fails. You'd have to have a super duper bill like the one you wanted for Mille Lacs when this pipeline fails for all the resorts and the hunting and the fishing across the state of Minnesota where this pipeline is proposed to go. I and many others do not consent to this bill. I hope this committee can open your minds, see the facts, that this bill circumvents the law. Please do not consent. Vote no on House File 3759. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Water is life.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with this bill? Please come down. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify on this bill? Come on down. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is A.J. Decker. Right now, I am a human services student graduating in a couple weeks. to go on for social work. If there's one thing that Human Services has taught me, is no matter how much you don't like the rules, no matter how much the rules seem superfluous, no matter how much you think, I could do this so much faster if, the answer is there are rules. There are protocols, there are ways that things are done. Now, yeah, sometimes it's true, you can get the job done faster if you circumvent this and that. If you say, well, we've done 90% of the work, we don't need to worry about the other 10% because 90% is done. The job isn't done. The job's not done if you do it wrong. Because if you do this wrong, you're gonna have to do this again. And, I don't wanna sit here again. No, everyone else doesn't wanna sit here again. By the way, most of you are staring at your phones, most of this time. I don't think you really wanna be here, and you probably mentally aren't here. No matter how much rules suck, they have to be followed. Now, if we want to put in to say that, we want to change the rules for every pipeline, for every this and that, then that's a discussion to have. But you can't come at the last minute, like so many other people said, you can't come at the last minute and say, okay, good job, everyone, we're going to do it our way now. If one person has to follow the rules, everyone has to follow the rules. If you make an exception that, this whatever committee doesn't have to be, doesn't have to give the okay, then that just opens the door for anyone else to do anything else they want because, well, this pipeline didn't have to get, approved, so why does any pipeline have to get approved? Why does any infrastructure have to get approved? If you're going to throw the rules out the window, then just throw all the rules out the window.
Thank you for your testimony. The next testifier come forward. And did I see, was there a third testifier who wished to testify? Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Rami Jubara. That is Rami Jubara. I'll be brief. I want to register my bafflement by your decision to introduce this bill. As I sort of struggle to come up with a truly benevolent reason for its introduction. And I'm going to remind you that we're going to be watching how this progresses, and we're all very excited for upcoming elections. That is all.
Thank you for your testimony. And then was there an additional testifier who wished to? And are there any other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? So this will be our final testifier of the evening. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Sherry Kuchar. I am from Fond du Lac, Minnesota, Chippewa tribe, federally recognized. You have not completed your survey with us yet, sir. For the culturalized thing, I know that for a fact because I'm actually supposed to take a 14-mile walk on the 9th of April with your culturalist specialist who is pottery. Okay, you're in charge of my culturalist specialist. You can tell me, because I hear a lot of people saying about water is very important, of course. I hear a lot about wild rice, very important. What about all the trees in there? The maple syrup, the cedar, the birch, all the animals, they need water. I think they're probably going to flee right away, and I'm going to run right with them because I just know when the animals run, I run with them because they already know they're in danger. The medicine, there's more medicine in there than just the water and the medicine. I have been looking for 34 years from a man, I believe he's right up there at the University of Minnesota, Jimmy Jackson. It's not a privilege to be Anishinaabe. It's a responsibility. And according to my 1854 treaty rights, it says in there that I have the right to hunt, gather, fish, And it also says in that treaty, if you look a little closely, it says in there that I have federally recognized to protect everything that grows within the forest and where the rivers, all the streams, until all the water, until my own people are perished for 7 generations. Now, I apologize. I've been sleeping on the job, I guess. Apparently, when I was at the Marines for 13 years, I didn't have time to come along and worry about somebody coming along and just destroying Mother Earth the way you want to do it. Now, I stood at Standing Rock. That was very hard. I have gone to wars that most of you guys don't even realize even happens. You have no idea what it felt like to be on one side of the line with my Native American brothers, sisters, and so many of the, may I say this, rainbow people. Thank you guys very much, because our 1.2% of the population doesn't do anything. But I also remember the feeling of having to stand with my brothers and sisters of the, well, you know, their army. Again, I'm Marine. I remember how that felt, and after I've gone to every war since Desert Storm, and I never once came back, and I never had to go to the Veterans Hospital until I came back from Standing Rock. That was war. I don't know how many of you guys had seen that. No, I'm not going to put an upside-down flag on me. I'm not going to scream how unjust all this is. We just had a bill. You guys just had a bill earlier about Northern. Okay, now apparently everybody is worried about Northern. Now, the surveys of the DNR that they do, they come from us Native Americans for our netting and spearing. That's the only thing you guys have. So if we have 5 million people out there snagging the Northern, apparently you guys have a lot, because I can't even get 5 fish right now to feast for the wolf, which is a ceremony that I take very seriously. Everything in that woods is medicine to me. There's nothing, like I said, I've been looking for 34 years for something in that woods that is not medicine. I have yet to find anything. Your survey with Found the Lab is not complete as your culturalist. I'm supposed to actually take a walk with your guy. I don't know if he's gonna make it through that 14-mile track though, because it's not paved. He might have to spend the night actually in camp, which is something I've been doing actually for the last 7 months. Camping. I sat in a cave 9 months away from America's Most Wanted. But I sat in Culver, Minnesota for 1 week and I ate mouse. Huh. I just don't see, I remember my grandma saying it was ridiculous that we are going to have to buy a bottled water. And now people are willing to give up their lives for water? Don't we all need water? Apparently, some of you guys on this table don't need too much because I don't see too many there, but I need water. The people, as far as I'm concerned, you guys have had voices for a very long time to speak on this matter. People have had the voice to speak up and do that for a long time. But all the animals, they don't have a voice. Those trees, all those plants, if you have a headache, I can go in. Actually, you have one right here. I can go right outside and I can make it for you. And I can get rid of your headache that quickly instead of if you want to take a pill and wait for that. I'm so opposed against this. This is, I was at Desert Storm. I've been to war and I've been to Standing Rock. And I now have PTS. I had to go do 2 weeks after I came back because it was unbelievable that a government had allowed that, the government that I was so proud of for 13 years to serve under. I'm still very proud of my government. But if you pass this, be prepared. War is on. I'm not saying, hey, let's all get up and do something, but I can't allow you to genocide my people. I can't let you to run through our forests and even the committee that was just here asking for Northern, so now you're going to pass a law to give them Northern for 10 years and see if they're accountable for that. This young man, Enbridge is not even accountable. They don't even want to give you guys full coverage insurance. This is Minnesota. It says right on there, land of 10,000 lakes. They don't even want to put up half the coverage if this spills. So now we have a foreign country running around here, and they don't even have liability insurance. Can't you at least make them give up the whole money first and say, hey, we got to have that first? I mean, I have to have liability insurance to drive one of them cars that we're all so proud of around here, land of 10,000 lakes. If you destroy our lakes, there goes all the jobs. Nobody's going to want to come to Minnesota. Why? We have no lakes left. We have no beauty. We have no nature. Jobs, you would probably make more jobs if you took all your pipes and you took them out. You probably create more jobs, or maybe you just need to slow down a little bit. Because first of all, I am a representative of Fond du Lac, Minnesota, Chippewa, federally recognized tribe, and you haven't even completed your culture survey with us. Enbridge hasn't completed that. Now, I don't know what people consider culture. Now, this morning I woke up, I smudged, I prayed. Even right now I am praying even right now. I don't know how much people know about our culture and our race, but if you want to come take this 14-mile walk with me, I'll show you everything in there why. I'm not going to give it permission to do that. I am responsible, but not only for my generation, and some people, they say they're responsible for 7 generations. I'm two-spirited, so I have to kick everything up because now I have to camp and I have to eat mouse to fight for clean water, so I can think ahead for 14 generations. And maybe I can think ahead for 100. So maybe what I hear is, you want to hurry up because, I don't know, maybe your pockets are a little broke or something, I don't know, but maybe you can just slow down a little bit. Wait for the survey to be done, which you had asked us to do as Fond du Lac. You had asked us to do that, and now you're saying you're not willing to even complete that? Because remember, seasons change. And we all know that. And with seasons change, so do medicines. The snow wasn't that great that year, so I'm sure snowmobiling wasn't that great, or fishing. I'm just opposed to this. I mean, at least slow it down. It's not even complete. They haven't even completed their contract with Fond du Lac Reservation of Minnesota, federally recognized. Federally recognized. Let me repeat this. Federally recognized. You haven't even completed that survey with us yet. But you are going to send me a specialist. It's in pottery. Okay, well, I can dig down now over there on Fond du Lac because there's some beautiful, and he can make me some pots, and then we can go in the woods and we can make some medicine or something. I don't know. I just don't see what's the big hurry. You're not even from this country. So now we're going to allow a foreign country to come over here, while at the same time, I just heard big bills about $20 billion to let immigration, to put up a wall. I just heard that. But now we're going to let foreign country come over into Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, and they don't even have liability insurance to offer. So who's going to get stuck cleaning that bill up? Because the pipes leak, that's just given. Your pipes have leaked. You have the biggest spill in Minnesota. Enbridge does. Your pipes leak. Now you don't even have liability insurance. You're not even willing to offer Minnesota liability insurance, and I need to have liability insurance just to even drive around in one of those plates that says land of 10,000 lakes that we're so proud of. Unless we should all just pass the bill today, and then we'll add it. Let's all get new plates that say land of 10,000 oil spills. Your survey's not done with us culturally, because if we did this all really culturally, I would have already been eating. I wouldn't be arguing about how the animals feel about this. It's not just the water, it's not just the monoman. Everything in that woods is medicine. We were just here for another party wanting to have more northern. Now you might pass this bill, so now you might give all these people grants and loans and everything, but if you pass this bill tonight, they can't say we guarantee 10 years from now we can be accountable for that, because this Enbridge isn't responsible, and they're not, it's going to leak. And as a matter of fact, your pipes have already leaked on Fond du Lac Reservation. As a matter of fact, they're already leaking right now. As we're talking, they're leaking through Big Lake. Mississippi, where do you guys think these rivers flow? They don't flow. They flow from north to south. Didn't the Mississippi start somewhere down here? I don't know. I think maybe we should just slow it down. And what's the rush? Do we need the oil tomorrow? We really don't need the oil tomorrow. We don't need it tomorrow. So maybe it'd be best to slow this down. And it's not just for my generation. It's not just for, I mean, because 1.2% of the population that we make up, I'm sure that we could conserve enough water to support our people. But we're not also, I'm not here just worrying about my people. You guys are my people too. I ain't full-blooded Native American. It's everybody's water. We should all have the ability to sit here and look ahead and say, you know, hey, I really care about my grandkids or those grandkids or for 7 generations. If you allow this to happen, I don't know how many of you guys have a first-class ticket up there to Mars, but I don't have one, and I wouldn't want one anyways because I really love this country. And it's not, just slow it down. You don't even have to make this decision. He hasn't even done his culture specialist, because I'm sitting here right now as Fond du Lac telling you, if you want to take a walk with me, you're glad to take a walk with me to that 14-mile walk. I wouldn't come dressed like that, though. 'Cause we gotta go through a lot of mud, swamp. We're gonna have to spend the night, but don't worry, I will feed you, I'll take care of you, and I'll make sure you come out of there all good. That's for sure, but maybe you better just slow things down a little bit here, because there are a lot of people very upset. And I could come up here and I could threaten and I could say, you know, hey, because I'm not afraid to stand in line. I wasn't afraid to stand in line for all you guys when I made that decision back in 1992. I signed my life over then for the people. And as a Marine, it also has in there something about protecting the water and the trees and everything like that. I won't get into all of that. So I kind of get a double whammy as being a Native American, because since the day I was born, I have been told since the day I was born that it's my responsibility to take care of Mother Nature. It's all of our responsibilities. If we don't need the oil today, maybe we shouldn't vote on it today. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we should make sure that you guys have full coverage insurance. Because right now you don't even have half. So everybody's pockets will pay for that. And the northern bill, you might as well vote that down right now if you're going to approve this bill, because they're not going to be able to feed their families for the 10 years either, because it's going to leak. That's given. They all leak. It's given. I'm opposed. Fond du Lac, I will see you guys on the 14th for that 14-mile walk, and I'll show you culturally, what's all in that woods.
This completes our public testimony. Member comments and questions? Representative Newberger and then Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the time here. I'll be brief. I wanted to make a couple comments about this bill. First of all, I do support this bill, and I am a co-author. But as I listen to the testimony move forward of all of the people who are impassioned about this issue, and I do appreciate that, sometimes we don't agree on things. But there's one particular comment that was made, Mr. Chair, that I found to be by one individual gentleman that was particularly insulting personally, is when he compared this Enbridge 3 project to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Very insulting. I've heard a number of comments about this whole process, Mr. Chair and members, that it's being fast-tracked, it's being put through at the last minute, it's being rammed through. There's no regard for process. We're not listening to the people, and it hasn't been fully researched. I checked with Chair Fabian, and this E3 process started in 2014. We are now entering the fifth year of this process. We've had delay after delay. By the testimony of one gentleman earlier today, we've had 22 environmental impact studies and 16 certification of need meetings. I was at the public hearing at the deck in Duluth recently. There was about 1,000 people there. Well over half were trade union members that I support. And these folks are just looking for jobs. And they're looking for the economic boost that Enbridge 3 would offer. And I stand with those guys. And I thought it was also very interesting that the comment was made, I believe it was by Chair Fabian, who said that all of the PUC members lived within 20 miles of the metro? Or is it 40? Regardless, that's not very far. And that's very out of touch with greater Minnesota. But what I find most disturbing about this whole thing is that no decision is going to be made by the PUC until after the legislature concludes for the session. It goes sine die. We've seen this pattern time and time again by different state agencies who are turning a deaf ear to the legislature, to the people that have been elected to represent the population of this state. They wait till the parents are gone, and then the kids tear up the house. That's exactly what's happening. That's what the state agencies like the DNR have done, MPCA have done, and now we see the PUC repeating the same pattern. They can't wait till we're gone so they can just do what they want to do. This bill is a proactive move to correct a problem and to bring some jobs and economic stability to the northern part of the state. It was also said that maybe some of us should live close to the power plants that we love because we're so in favor of nuclear and coal and gas. Well, for your information, I've lived downwind of the largest coal plant in the Midwest, 1/2 mile, for over 20 years. I'm darn proud of that coal plant, and I'm darn proud of the people that work there, and I'm very blessed by the economic security that that has brought to this state and our community, not to mention the jobs and the power, affordable power. The biggest issue that we face overall, and when it comes to energy policy in this state, is regulatory uncertainty. We don't have it. No one wants to come here and provide jobs and build infrastructure because it is such a regulatory nightmare. Thank you, Chair Fabian, for bringing this bill forward. It's a breath of fresh air and a step in the right direction, and I'm proud to support House File 3759.
Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just need to respond to some of the comments made by Chair Fabian. You indicated early on, I guess during your introduction, that you somewhat represented some of the interests of the building trades up in northern Minnesota. That's what I gleaned from your comments there, and I was just amazed at your comments there. I've been in dozens of building trades meetings for the last dozen or so years up north, and we've always maintained that we would follow the science. And now with 3759, it seems as if you're going to abandon the science. I don't know if you're speaking on behalf of any certain building trades, but typically we see some flyers from the interested parties, and I don't see anything of that. So I'm going to dismiss some of your comments as just being purely anecdotal. I see nothing here of support from the building trades. That said, There's another issue. Last week, I had a bill up in property taxes, and we addressed an issue of brought forth by Enbridge. There's a lawsuit working its way through the system. It's being bantered back and forth from tax court to the Supreme Court. And I authored House File 2971, and that's a bill that would require the state of Minnesota to pay the cost of property tax judgments. The Enbridge Energy case, if they're successful in getting reassessed on their property taxes, that could be really damaging to some of our rural counties and their taxpayers. That tax case that began its way through the court system last fall would force counties to repay $18 million in tax revenue collected and dispersed between 2012 and 2014, and possibly more than $50 million when they calculate 2015 and 2017. The state's going to be on the hook to bail out these counties. And if they don't, we've got some explaining to do. And most particularly in Clearwater County. Half of their county budget is dependent on tax money derived from Enbridge. And they're seemingly willing to shortchange Clearwater County. And up in Kitson County, they could potentially have a total of nearly $3 million shortfall. And in Marshall County, north of $6 million, and in Pennington County, almost $5 million total at the end of the day. So you've got some explaining to do to your county boards up there if Enbridge were to be successful in their efforts here. And it just befuddles me how you come forth and you're being a proponent for Enbridge, and I don't see any solicitation from them or any support of this bill either. So I'm not questioning your motives. I think you're very clear. They're just purely political.
Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start by thanking all the testimony today, because you've raised a number of issues and reinforced a number of issues. Representative Fabian, I'm concerned about a couple of the comments you made in your introductory remarks. You indicated a couple of times that all the technical work had been done. And yet I'm aware, and it's been reinforced through the testimony, that the cultural survey has not been completed. So I guess where I'm confused is the cultural survey a technical item, or is it a substantive item?
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not sure. Representative Dabney, I'm not sure on that, but I'm more than happy to have some conversations with you about that. And if you'd like to bring an amendment forward to address that in my bill, I'm happy to work with you.
Representative Dabney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Fabian, I mean, it's not a matter of an amendment. It's the PUC, unfortunately, decided that the cultural survey did not need to be completed before they would make a decision. Going back to the comments that have been made repeatedly this evening, that this decision is apparently going to be made in June. But if the PUC is involved and a later problem is, and then the cultural survey is completed, and there's determined to be a problem, there's a process for dealing with that. If it's found that there are cultural sites, I'm trying to use choose my language carefully here, so if I get it wrong, apologies, but if it's determined there is cultural sites along the route, there's a process for dealing with them. I think of Duluth, I think in the last year or so, they were doing some road construction, and in the process of preparing the land, they discovered human remains. It was determined those human remains were a traditional native burial ground, and that was somehow dealt with because there was a process. What happens if we skip the PUC process, as you determine, override that, and then it's determined that there are cultural sites being damaged by Enbridge through the siting of the pipeline? What's the remedy there then if you've skipped the process?
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, Representative Dabney, I'll repeat myself. I'm happy to work with you on that. If we can avoid that by making an amendment to this bill to require that as we move forward in this process, again, I'm happy to work with you on that. I understand the concerns that people have.
Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's ironic because the way to deal with that is to not introduce and move your bill. I mean,
Representative Dabney, you have the floor.
thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a process, and while your folks are complaining about that process, it's the process that we created. The legislature is responsible for the process and the regulation. You'd said in your introductory remarks that this, you wanted to get it, you didn't want this to be a political process, but you started your remarks by calling for a roll call vote. The PUC has expertise, process, staff with the appropriate background. There's a curse to having been here too long. It's coming at you before too long, Representative Fabian. But I believe it was 2014, then Representative Knuth, wicked smart young woman, she's finishing up a PhD, which makes her a lot smarter than me, had an amendment on the House floor related to climate change. I don't remember the details, but it was somewhat technical in nature. And 201, the GOP got up and said, I can't vote for this. I'm not a scientist. I can't vote for this. I'm a small business owner. I'm not a scientist. I can't vote for this. I'm a gym teacher and a coach, not a scientist. And yet your proposal is to take this decision away from scientists and put it into a political arena where you as a Phi Ed teacher and a coach and me as a social studies teacher and a nonprofit guy are going to make a decision about the science of Enbridge's Line 3 and about the history, cultural, and traditions about the cultural survey without being anywhere near qualified. I think you've chosen a highly political process while telling us in your introductory remarks that's not what you wanted to do. What I know is that you also, and I'll close with this, Representative Fabian and Mr. Chair, you said in your introductory remarks this was a matter of opponents of the pipeline versus the people in northern Minnesota. But there's a whole bunch of people who've testified today from northern Minnesota who don't want this bill to go forward. And what I understand, what I know is the Red Lake Band, the Red Lake Nation, recently their governing body took a unanimous vote, and any of us in elected office know how rare unanimous votes are, to rescind a land swap with Enbridge. And has been testified here, the 5 sovereign nations in northern Minnesota have all taken a position in opposition to this. So I'll ask a rhetorical question, but if those folks aren't the people of northern Minnesota, what are they? And who are the people of northern Minnesota if it's not inclusive of them? Thank you.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Representative Fabian for bringing this bill forward. One of the things that I was worried about, and I think the testifiers did an amazing job today. I am from Aiken, and I know there was an earlier testifier from Aiken. I don't see Shania is here right now, but she was spot on with Aiken County is just a lot of wetlands and a lot of water, and I am so grateful that I get to call that my hometown. One of the things, though, that I kept thinking of when I think of Aiken, and I think of the town of maybe 2,500, 3,000 people, and as I grew up there and played baseball there, I remember the railroad that goes right through town. It goes through town about 35, 40 miles an hour. And if the Enbridge or whatever pipeline doesn't happen, that oil isn't going to stop moving. My concern today was, what I didn't hear was about public safety. I didn't hear the folks talking about public safety, because in downtown Aiken, there's a place called Beacon Arch, and it's right next to the railroad. And then on the other side of the railroad, there's an assisted living place that has a lot of folks living there too. And we have a high school about a block away off the rail. So my concern is if the pipeline didn't happen, we've got an extra 10 trains going through every day at 35, 40 miles an hour, because I would be very much afraid of what could happen then too. Nothing that we have is guaranteed to be always safe. Nothing is. But what I will tell you, in that little town of Aiken, I worry about the playpen I saw outside last summer in front of Beacon Arch apartments. And that's what makes me worried too. And as legislators, we have to balance this. We have to try to balance and do the best thing that we can for all of Minnesota. Because there's not a single person in this room, at this table as well, that wants to see our oil hitting the water and hitting some bad spots in our great Northland. There isn't. I'm one of them. That's my hometown. So I also appreciate what it does economically for those very poor counties. Aiken is one of the poorest counties in the state. So that has to be recognized as well. So what wasn't here today was public safety. And I just want to say that that can't be ignored. That's why I'm going to support the bill tonight. I appreciate you bringing it forward, Representative Fabian. It's the right thing to do. And again, I'm also disappointed it's taken so long to get us to this point. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the testimony tonight or today was compelling. I wrote down a couple of things that struck me. Let the system play out. Don't circumvent the rules. The job's not done. Everyone has to follow the rules, slow it down. And then the last one was wait for the survey to be done. But I also heard, and I almost hope I misheard this comment, that if this pipeline is built, there will be violence. I think I also heard that war is on if this pipeline is built. So it appears to me that the folks want the system to play out if it plays out to their satisfaction. And if we're going to let the system play out, the system should play out and let the chips fall where they may. But the comments about violence being on and war is on were very disappointing to me, especially in light of all the calls for letting the system play out and do it the correct way.
That's Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to echo Representative Dabney's remarks.
If you can pull your microphone closer, Jim.
Thanks so many people who've come down here.
You got to put it up by your mouth.
Okay. I want to thank so many people who have come for so far to chat with us. And I also would echo his remarks about the rest of his remarks. So thank you. But I think there's only one thing we agree on here, Representative Fabian, and that is that a decision is going to be made in June. That's only weeks from now. So the only thing I can think about is the reason you might want to bring this bill here is you think that there is a danger that the PUC will say there's no pipeline needed. It's the only reason for this bill. I am an absolute no vote.
Representative Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're next on the list. You looked at me like you were surprised I called on you.
No,
Okay, all right.
no, I'm happy that you called on me. Well, I want to also thank everyone who came today. I thought there was incredible testimony and lots of heart and passion. As you were suggesting earlier, Representative Fabian would be coming, and it did. And I thank people for sharing their feelings. And I actually heard a fear of violence and a fear of war that would come, as it did at Standing Rock, more than that people are threatening. And I heard a difference. I actually happened to have the privilege of going to Standing Rock, and I saw what was a very peaceful resistance going on there. What I wanted to say, though, is I handed out a map that shows the route of the pipeline going through incredible concentration of wild rice beds. And I just think, please look at this. As was said earlier, there are alternatives. There was one alternative that was suggested here with a blue line to skip the wild rice beds. And that's one of several that could happen. What I understand about wild rice, I have the privilege of representing a lot of Native people in my district in Minneapolis. The Anishinaabe people were told to travel to the place where the food grows on the water. And the Manoman is where the wild rice beds are. And my understanding of, these are like holy lands to the people. They're sacred lands. And I think a lot of us know about holy lands in other parts of the world. And I just really urge you, Representative Fabian, to join in trying to make sure that this does not go through this sacred land and destroy this important part of a whole culture that I think people talked about in very passionate ways tonight. I'll just leave it at that. I really am hoping that you might change your mind about this.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the testifiers today. Many of them were very eloquent. To clear up a couple of things, I took the references to war and violence of any sorts was if this pipeline crossed sovereign tribal lands, not the other piece to that. So I think that's a sad statement to make, but it's still not total war against the state of Minnesota or other citizens of the state of Minnesota. And when this bill was put on the horizon that it was going to have a hearing, I received phone calls from both Labor and Enbridge stating that this was not their idea and they did not particularly appreciate it. So, because they were more than happy to wait 10, 12, 13 weeks to the decision at the PUC. They thought the process had gone long, but fair. And Enbridge has been made out to be the boogeyman. They were happy as the process. I'm never going to say happy with Enbridge in the same sentence. But they were comfortable with where their testimony had left them at this particular time, and they were willing to wait for that 12 to 13 weeks. So this is really a bill that kind of meant for campaign literature more than anything else, as far as I can tell. Because one of the other pieces to this is if this bill passes and Enbridge started to build something, this is another lawsuit waiting somewhere. There's got to be a lawyer out there thinking they can make money off of it, or they can make a name for themselves off of it. So in reality, it'd probably slow down, if it's approved, if it was approved,
Sorry.
it would have made it slower. Your bill would make it slower to actually get work in the ground and moving forward with it. It's been said by the testifiers, by other members of this committee, that this should be based on science and law, not politics. So, and I'm going to go back to one of the statements here is, Representative Fabian, if you don't like the process, part of what we do here is we work year after year after year on a particular issue, whether it is housing or energy or jobs or tort reform. Now, I think most of the members were in this committee last year when I had my diatribe about environmental lawsuits and know my position on that. I believe that we have put into law a process. And just because somebody doesn't dot an I or cross a T, you shouldn't be able to delay things for 6 months. Representative Fabian, I think at this particular point, you're the only one that's fearful that the PUC won't come out with a fair and just decision. And as one of the other testifiers said, you're acting like a younger person flipping the board because you didn't like it. And that's not how we do things. I'm going to vote against this particular bill because I think if we don't have a system of laws and processes, we have anarchy. And who's ever in charge gets to make the rules for that particular week or month or biennium. And that can be problematic for society moving forward on anything. It doesn't matter whether it's an oil line, a road, or public policy. So, Representative Fabian, if you wanted to change the process, I would sit down and try to work with you. But if all you want to do is flip the board up, I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's right, and I'm going to be happy to voice my opposition to this bill.
Representative Barr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time this evening to hear everybody out. There was no time limits on anybody. I just wanted to let that known that everybody got to say anything they wanted. Half hour, I think there was one testifier alone went over a half an hour, as opposed to the ALJ up in Thief River Falls that got 3 minutes, hard cut off. So I just wanted to thank the chair for letting everybody have their say.
Representative Fabian, you're the author. You get the last word.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the debate that we've had here this evening. As I said in my opening comments, I've listened to the people in Northwest Minnesota. I've listened to county commissioners in Kitson County and in Marshall County. I've listened to the trade unions members, who are some of them former students of mine, who see the value in this project. I do not represent any trade unions, but I do represent my constituents. This is a project that has tremendous potential for economic development in Northwest Minnesota. And when I go to the hearings and when I go to the county commission meetings, and Representative Sundin, I invite you to come with me to Kitson County. It's a great place. I'm happy to represent the people of Northwest Minnesota. My motivation is not because of a potential outcome at the PUC and my being, quote, afraid of what the outcome might be. I have hope that it will be approved, just like the last vote that the PUC took was a unanimous decision on moving the project forward. But I am also concerned about how people back in Northwest Minnesota, if the decision were to not be in favor of the Line 3 replacement, as I said in my opening comments, they're going to look at me and they're going to say, what did you do? What did you do? What could you have done? And this is something that I could have done, and I'm doing it. And as to the science and so forth and all of this, I think that the EIS that has been deemed adequate by the PUC is the bedrock of science. I'm happy to work with Representative Dabney on some other things if we need to do that with regards to the cultural things, to have Enbridge go through that process. I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that people understand that there's a whole bunch of issues involved in this. Representative Baker talked about trains. It's pipes versus trains. It's 60-year-old pipes in the ground. Lots of people are concerned about pipes leaking. Representative Mahoney, you know a lot of people that can weld. We're going to put these pipes in the ground. We're going to weld them together. They're going, pipes hopefully are going to come from US and northern Minnesota iron ore, this, mind up. Well, whatever. Okay. However you do that, and the elbows that you put in there too, I think the elbows are actually stronger, are they not? Okay.
Anyways,
So anyway, this is the bill that I think that's important. I'm happy to keep moving it forward, Mr. Chair. And you know, this is something that's been going on, as Representative Newberger pointed out, since 2013 with the sandpiper. That process started. People became aware of the concerns of many of the natives, and I respect that. So the map that you have in your packet on the back of the House Research Summary shows how the line was changed to keep it from going through so much of the tribal lands, and they chose a new route. This is the sandpiper route that was done. And so now the Line 3 replacement is going to be replaced from where it enters in from North Dakota into Minnesota. It's going to follow that line to Clearbrook, and then from there it's going to take the detour and go south and then go back over to Duluth. This project, I'll remind the committee, is basically up and running in Canada, it's up and running in North Dakota, and it's up and running in Wisconsin. And the processes there started after or at roughly the same time as they did here, and they've got the project completed, and they're waiting for that connection here in Minnesota. So we have a choice to make. Do we put new pipes in the ground? They're going to be safer, going to keep trains off the tracks, and or are we going to continue with where we are? So with that, Mr. Chair, I would also work with Representative Dabney on this to show that I'm not trying to be political, and I will withdraw my roll call request.
okay. Representative Fabian withdraws his roll call request and renews his motion to have House File 3759 recommended to pass and referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. No. The motion prevails. The motion is adopted. Representative Dabney, thank you. Members, that completes our agenda for the day. We are adjourned.